This is a David Webb Show special presentation.
When you were kids, you all admired the champion marble shooter, the fastest runner, big league ball players, the toughest boxer. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. I will be proud to lead you wonderful guys into battle anytime, anywhere. That's all.
General Leadership with General John Michel and Colonel Matthew Fritz on SiriusXM Patriot.
And tonight, live from three of America's great cities, I'm here in New Orleans at the New Orleans Downtown Marriott at the Convention Center. General Michel, Colonel Matthew Fritz are in Washington, D.C., in our nation's capital, and tied in through our New York studios. A great lineup tonight. Lieutenant General Michel Johnson, U.S. Air Force Academy Superintendent. Blake Miles, former Special Forces Sergeant, and joined tonight also by Staff Sergeant Clinton Lavore Romesha, Clint, to his friends, a recipient of the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty in 2009. So a great hour of general leadership tonight and a great lineup of guests. And to my co-host, as always, both gentlemen, but first, rank and officer wins, as always, General John Michel in Washington, D.C. Great to have you on. And now that you're retired, I think I can actually just say, hi, John. How are you for a moment?
I completely agree. And as always, David, it's a joy and a privilege to join you, Matthew. And as you indicated, we have really an incredible lineup tonight. And we're going to talk about our favorite topic, and that is character.
Well, character matters. And, you know, it's such a great mix tonight to have both active duty and retired officers to talk about this, and certainly Colonel, someone who's still serving our nation actively. It's always great to have you here. Good to have you back on American soil, as I've said before, and great to have you here without the quarter-second delay.
Well, thanks, David. It's really an honor to be here in studio this month and to share your audience and introduce them to these amazingly brilliant folks we have this week or this month. People who are really, in their own right, examples of great character leadership development. And we're going to be talking tonight about intentional character development and why that really matters. And I think it's going to be a wonderful show.
Before I turn it over to you for the formal introduction, General Michel, I spoke to a few people earlier today about tonight's show, and I mentioned the Lieutenant General Johnson, who's joining us in a moment. And one of the questions was to be in charge of the development of not only some of our nation's future leaders, but young men and women, and the character that needs to be instilled, but also the character it takes to achieve those heights. One of the things I'd like to address tonight with the Lieutenant General, with General Johnson, and I'll get that correct, but I'll turn it over to you for the introduction.
Thank you, David. And, you know, for our listening audience, it's a great privilege to be able to introduce Lieutenant General Michel Johnson. You know, she's been forging the way forward and for many years in the United States Air Force. She went to the academy herself, where she was a distinguished graduate. Matter of fact, she was the first female wing commander, also an All-American. She went on to be a Rhodes Scholar and came on in 1984 to earn her pilot wings. She went on to a host of assignments where she has commanded and led by example across the globe. I know, because I've had the privilege of serving with her multiple times. So when it comes to being a person who not just can speak about character, but who exemplifies it every single day, ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute privilege to introduce Lieutenant General Michel Johnson, the Superintendent of the United States Air Force Academy. Welcome, ma'am.
Hey, John, thanks very much. It's a real privilege to be on this show with some heroes, and I look forward to listening to those gentlemen after me. And thanks to you and David and Colonel Fritz. And it's great to hear you again. I look forward to working with you again someday. This is a real privilege to be with you tonight.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Well, General,
oh, yeah, go ahead, David.
I just want to say welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show. You've certainly broken through the ranks yourself and many of those ceilings, if you will, not just in the air. So to speak to someone who has achieved such levels as you have and in in charge with such an awesome duty of putting out those next generation of leaders. Thank you.
Oh, it's my honor. Thank you.
So, General Johnson, if we have an audience, I know that they, as David indicated, has been really excited to hear from you. And, what I'd like to ask you to share with the listening audience is why, in your view, intentionally developing character, be it in cadets at the Air Force Academy as our future military leaders, or in students in classrooms across America, matter? Why does it matter?
Well, we certainly think it does, and we think it's part of the essence of why our academy exists. And it actually should be involved in every aspect of what we do, whether it's academics, athletics, or the military training. And we think it's because character has a lot to do with how you manage and overcome adversity, how you translate your core values into action, and that really defines your character. In fact, there's been a good amount of research and attention paid to character lately. What is it? How do we define it? And at a place like the Air Force Academy, how do we ensure our graduates exhibit the character that we really expect? In fact, when I arrived at the Academy about 18 months ago, I was a little concerned. We have a lot of signs that say we produce leaders of character. People said it over and over again, but I wondered if we were saying it so much that it had become a cliche. So I asked our senior leadership to think on it more deeply. What do we mean when we say a leader of character? And we're, this is a never-ending challenge. We're still working it, but I think we're settling on what some in the character research world, and of course I'm a commander of a unit, but I'm also a college president, so I have sort of two hats here. So scholarship matters here and how we do our work. And so the way people talk about things, I think, is that's a combination of moral character, things like fairness and integrity, and it's also performance character, such as effort, perseverance, and grit. And so having this combination of internal morals, or what we call in the Air Force our core values, integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do, along with the performance characteristics to deliver is absolutely essential, because we've got to deliver for our country. That's why we're here. And when uniform, obviously it's just vital. We have to be able to trust each other. I sometimes, talk with my colleagues, and maybe we've talked about this before, that the Air Force came up with integrity, service, and excellence as our core values. But really it's about trusting each other. I trust you to do your best. I trust you to put the effort above yourself, and that I can believe you when you talk to me. And the Army has its own version. It's different words. The Navy does, the Coast Guard, because we all are trying to get at this sense of trust and have that character shine when you're in adversity, because that's when it really counts. And all of us, whether in uniform or not, go through adversity. For every citizen, not just a relatively small percentage that will volunteer to serve, but all American citizens need to have the character found repeatedly in our heritage, to do the right thing under fire, and that's what's made us great.
Hey, Colonel, I believe you have some questions for the General as well.
Thanks, David. Ma'am, trust, as you mentioned, and developing the character to back it up is really what leadership's all about. And I spent some time up there just recently with some of the members of your team, and was really excited with some of the programs that and initiatives that are underway there at the Academy to develop character. And I was wondering if you might be able to explain some of those programs and how that affects the development of character in the next generation of leaders.
Yeah, I have a great team, and we're doing our utmost to get at this so we can get leaders who are, better than I am in 30 years, right? That's the warfare's changing, and we need to be able to adapt and have them be agile and open to the diversity of thought and all the things that it's going to take to have the modern profession of arms. So our academics include courses on ethics and discussions of human dignity and the humanities. I was sitting on an English class, for instance, and they can interpret plays and poetry and even fiction to try to draw lessons about the human condition and how you lead people with character and inspire them and instill it in yourself. So that's on the academic side. Then on the military side, we design experiences to encourage leadership in practice, to walk their way from personal and interpersonal to organizational and team leadership, and have it be a leadership lab to practice and make mistakes and understand other people and themselves and their strengths and their weaknesses and what they need to work on. in athletics, competition is essential to what we provide, whether it's intramurals, everybody plays intramurals, or we have 27 Division I intercollegiate sports, or just the rigorous physical fitness tests. It really requires challenging yourself and holding each other accountable. In sports, it's hard to. I was a basketball player, and I know that it's you're yourself out there when elbows are flying and you're working hard and the fever's up. That's who you really are, and your character really can shine there. In airmanship, we have we're the Air Force Academy, so of course we have gliders, they're acrobatic gliders. We have powered flight, and we have parachute jump teams, and we compete in those categories. So they got to do the right thing every time. It's calling someone out when they don't meet a standard. And that takes moral courage to call a peer out and make them be squared away. For instance, I did a tandem parachute jump with the cadets this summer, and my jump master, the last guy to check my straps. Of course, now I had a helper. I was strapped to a wonderful sergeant, I admit, but the guy who checked my straps was the cadet who turned out to be the cadet wing commander. And it's an amazing sense of accountability to each other when push comes to shove. It's not about rank; it's about the mission and getting it done, and they really learn it there. And then probably the foundation of our character training is our honor code, and it's the minimum to living an honorable life. I will not lie, steal, nor cheat, nor tolerate anyone among us who does. That's a minimum. It doesn't necessarily help you live honorably, so that's why the character education and training and practice goes on top of that. So, and we try not to just be stuck in these facets of the academy experience that have been around for our 60-year history, but we want to better develop what we might call performance character, and so we've developed a Pathways to Excellence team, kind of a continuous improvement team, kind of like a think tank internally, to design new programs or revamp existing experiences to better develop responsibility, commitment, and maturity in our cadets, and in a relevant way, because they're 20 and I'm way over 50. So we need to make sure it means something to them, right? So and these efforts are getting us away from the 18th century Prussian model where students are cloistered away from society. We can't work that way, and they're going to have their character be strong in a very diverse environment, a very global environment. So we're finding ways to incorporate real relevant experiences into their learning. And so as you probably had a chance to see, the Center for Character and Leadership Development is at work now and presenting presentations externally and internally to our cadets, of course. But we're also helping our faculty and staff get this right and make sure we model the behavior. And we want to posture ourselves to share our scholarship and programs beyond the academy and serve as a real center of excellence and outreach for the Air Force and for the nation. For example, our experts have been involved in discussions of professions of arms and what's professionalism mean in cyber, what's character in a cyber environment, in social media. And so we're fortunate with the generosity of our alumni and some government funding to have a new beautiful skylight tower, the Polaris Tower.
It is. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
I climbed up at the top. We put the very top of the framework on. It's 105 feet tall, and we're getting the glass on, and we'll open it this summer. And we hope we can welcome, these kinds of conversations to get best practices to see how we can do even better. So we're very excited what we're trying to do, and we're investing in the people who are going to be leading us in the future, so we know how important it is.
Well, it sounds like they've got really great leadership right off the bat with you, Lieutenant General Johnson. I want to go to the personal side of this as well, because you're a mother of two young men. Not only do you lead and train and help guide young men and women at the Air Force Academy, but you have two young men, and you're a parent, and the role of parents in our society in teaching children, bringing them up correctly, doing the best they can to give them guidelines and a way forward. How do you combine that, if you want to call it your work-life balance, your professional balance, along with being that parent who wants those two young men to grow up to be good, productive members of society, whether they go to the academy or not?
Well, thanks for asking. I tell you, I'm so fortunate, and the person you haven't mentioned is my phenomenal husband, who was a Eagle Scout, Outward Bound, went to Virginia Military Institute, was a flight test engineer, and then a pilot. That's how I met him. And he actually retired at 20 years when our boys were born, a little bit late for us, but he holds us together. And he has a tremendous strength of character, and John Michel knows that from knowing my husband John. And he lived under an honor code at BMI, and he loved his service. He was airlift liaison to the Marines at the 3rd MEF for about 3 years. So the duty and service mean a lot to him. So, we're just really blessed with our twin boys who are in 6th grade. And we hope we're doing okay. I mean, I think like every other parent, there's no operating manual, right? So I don't pretend to be an expert here, and I don't even know if we're in balance. I think it's like dynamic disequilibrium. But the way we try to model respect for each other, respect for other people, and try to expose them, just like with our cadets, to try to expose them to different experiences to help with their maturity. We've been very, very fortunate in the travels we've had. I was just my assignment before this one was in Belgium. I was the head of operations and intelligence for Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe for NATO. So they went to this American International School with kids from 40 other countries. And even though they're not necessarily fluent in another language besides English, they get the idea that it's a big world. People are trying to live their lives and solve problems with different backgrounds and different challenges, and to respect that, but also to be confident in what they know. So, again, we're doing our best, and so I don't claim victory here, but I love that teachers say they sometimes sit special needs kids next to our boys because they know they'll help them and they'll be respectful.
Well, that is a pretty solid background to have when you have you as an example, your husband also a part of the picture, and this balance that you have described to us and these principles, they're important because the next generation of leaders don't all come out of the military. They come out of the culture. They come from so many areas of our country. And regardless of background, the great thing about this country is anyone with the right opportunity, drive, and there are so many other factors, of course, they can achieve and they can grow. And that's what we do with General Leadership. We bring people like yourself and others on to demonstrate and to give this audience and give the country a chance to hear from those leaders, leadership advice from some of America's great leaders. And you are certainly General Johnson, one of them. It's a real pleasure to have you here. And I'll turn it over to General Michel to close out this segment.
Well, thank you, David. And, General Johnson, as I shared with the audience at the beginning, I've had the good fortune of knowing and watching you do what you do best, which is inspire others, bring out the best in others, encourage folks to push the bounds of their potential. And on behalf of just myself, all those whose lives you've invested in, my teammate Matthew, and probably most importantly, the incredible young people that every single day at the Air Force Academy today have you as their leader. I just want to thank you because, there's a time when a lot of people kind of lament perhaps the direction some areas of leadership is perhaps going in America, and then we hear stories like this. We hear what you're doing at the Academy, and it truly provides a source of encouragement for many. So thank you so much for all you do, who you are, and it is great to be connected again with you, ma'am.
Oh, I look forward to continuing now. And just, I would just tell you, just all you have to do is meet one of these wonderful young people, and you'll be inspired. So I'm inspired by them. I'm honored that you take this on and talk about this publicly in this forum. So thanks, gentlemen, for everything that you're doing. Thanks for including me today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, General Johnson. In our next segment, Blake Miles, former Special Forces Sergeant and also the Program Director of Next Ridgeline, Green Beret Foundation program focused on assisting special operations personnel wisely transition out of the military and back into civilian life. Blake Miles joins us next, and don't forget ahead a very special treat, Medal of Honor recipient on General Leadership tonight, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Clint Romesha.
This is the David Webb Show. David Webb. Leadership with General John Michel and Colonel Matthew Fritz on SiriusXM Patriot.
Now, I've got to say, how cool is that to have our 3-star general, a woman, and the superintendent of the U.S. Air Force Academy on? That's an achievement. We continue, John, to break through the multiple ceilings with the Navy, with the Army, with the Marines, with the Air Force. I don't know. What are we going to do next for an encore?
Well, we're certainly gonna find a way to continue to raise the bar, because I'll tell you, from the feedback we're getting, people are really hungry for this. They're loving it because they're talking to real leaders of substance, not leaders that just espouse slogan, but they're living out the message. And just think how lucky we've been, David, with the kind of people we've had the opportunity to have conversation with, and most importantly, share with the great listening audience that you have. That don't give up hope. There are great people all across America getting her done.
Yeah. Now, if we could only get ourselves in one city.
Exactly. That's been the harder thing.
You and I really in one. We were in one city. We were in Kabul. That's the last time I think the three of us were in one city doing a show, and it was from 16,000 miles away.
Although that's a pretty impossible memory to overcome, right?
It's funny, is we had to fly you to a war zone so that we could actually get together to do the show. You're right. It was, but remember that
show? I know,
show?
if you think about it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
What did we do? We did like a 2 or 3 hour show.
I think you arrived at 2:00 in the morning, and we had a show at 5 a.m. And then we tried to get you into a whole bunch of spots. You got to go flying. It was an amazing opportunity.
And we interviewed 16 young Americans that were there. Remember those? How inspiring every single one of those young people were. No prep.
Yeah,
just say step up to the mic. From the Dragon's Lair. I still got those pictures.
With David out there in the Mi-35.
That is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was. It's fantastic.
Can you imagine that? Next, where do we go next?
I don't know. I'm hoping not another war zone, but I'm open to it. We got a little practice.
Let's
so
skip
what the
the
heck?
war zone and stick with America.
That's right. At least for a little while.
We've got a gentleman who's back from the war zone, former Special Forces Sergeant and Program Director of Next Ridgeline. Blake Miles is on the line with us. Blake, how are you?
Doing pretty good. How about you guys?
I'm doing all right, Blake. So we're going to have to bring you in on this, Blake, and see where we end up next, because it's sooner or later we've got to get into one city. I'm in New Orleans at the New Orleans downtown Marriott at the Convention Center. General Michel and Colonel Fritz are in D.C. in our D.C. studios, and you're tied in through New York. So where are you right now?
I am currently buried in snow in northern Indiana.
All right, there we go. See, we're covering all areas of the country. General, it's such a pleasure to have Blake on. I really got a little bit more intimate with the Green Beret Foundation a few months ago in New York City at one of their big fundraisers. Just an amazing programs at the Green Beret and their various programs and the various Green Beret activities.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. I mean, we know there are a lot of organizations that are doing great things, but this is why we wanted to bring Blake on. I had the great privilege of spending some time with Blake when we did a TED together down at one of the campuses by Penn State just several months ago. And when he started to explain to me the programs that he had developed as being a member of the Green Beret Foundation, I said, this is what America needs to hear about. So, Blake, brother, first, it's great to be connected with you again. And would you share with the listening audience a little bit about the Green Beret Foundation? They may not understand, but we're really interested in what you're doing now with regard to help perhaps veterans who are struggling in transition, or how we're really helping them succeed in the next chapter of their lives.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to reiterate, appreciate the opportunity to be on here tonight. Well, what the Green Beret Foundation is, it was started back in 2011 by Aaron Anderson. And Aaron Anderson, he's a staff sergeant at the time. We were actually in basic training together. That's kind of how I knew him. But he got injured over in Afghanistan, and while he was going through recovery, he realized that there's a lot of things that he was recognizing that this would be something that would really help our guys that are wounded, or something that would actually just help him. And he was in a room with Roland Paquette, who is also injured in Afghanistan, and his wife Jen, who is our current executive director of the Green Beret Foundation. That's how they all met. And so Aaron came up with the idea and started moving the ball on developing this program to essentially help out wounded Green Berets and their families in the transition of obviously a terrible time for both the families, especially if the guy's killed. There's a lot of the bureaucracy is so big. There's a lot of things that can slip through, and a lot of things that can't be answered. So true to the Green Beret unconventional mindset, our goal is to identify these needs and these issues that the families and the Green Berets are having, and apply whatever resources we have at our disposal to answer those needs and concerns. So,
what are some of those big hurdles that you face? Veteran integration is a big part of the issue. What are some of those big hurdles?
Well, the big hurdle for the integration side of things is, guys spend so much time deployed, especially in special operations. The operational tempo is so quick that a lot of guys are deploying 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times going overseas. So you end up, losing track of not only your family and what's going on in the civilian world, but also yourself. So it's I just did one deployment to Iraq, and the contrast of being overseas for a number of months and then coming back home, the contrast of the two realities is just so stark that it takes a while to reintegrate. And so the more deployments you have, the harder it is to make that adjustment. And I'd say the biggest problem of the reintegration is just the gap. I kind of explain it as there's a huge chasm between what the civilian world thinks the military does and is, and what the military actually is. And it goes both ways too, because you spend so much time in the military, you end up getting institutionalized into the military, so you don't have a good understanding of what life is actually like in the civilian world, or specifically how the business world actually works. And so that's what we've been working on with the Green Beret Foundation. One of the new programs that we started up, and it's the program I'm the manager of, is the Next Ridgeline. So building up that network of resources and expertise to help explain and help translate not only what the civilian life and what the business world is actually looking for in terms of how to get a job or how to translate those skills, but reintegrating our guys back into society so they're not just doing a job to pay the bills. They're actually doing something that they're passionate about and they want to be doing, and utilizing those same
Colonel,
skills.
let me bring you two together on this, because sure. Colonel Fritz, I would hazard a guess that you talk to a fair amount of people who may be looking at what they do when they leave the military, and you still being active in a colonel, you'll cross that path, whether it's enlisted personnel, even your colleagues, your officer colleagues. What Blake's talking about and what you talk about there as an active duty officer, how do these two gel? What are the concerns that you hear now that need to be addressed?
Well, actually, David, one of the largest challenges that military members face when they leave the military is how to translate the skills and abilities that they have acquired through their service, and then translate that to the civilian market. So what Blake is doing is really providing that translator, that codex that's going to help civilian employers understand what is it that this military member brings to my team, and why is that so valuable. Blake, you on a daily basis come across people of immense character, and I was just wondering, do you have any examples of character in action? Somebody that you've personally known that just exemplifies true character in action. Can you name somebody and maybe tell us a little bit about why?
Definitely running across those people on a daily basis. And let me think here. There's one guy in specific. Fortunately, after years and years of not really having a communication channel, I finally found a a group on Facebook that only has Special Forces guys, and they're all vetted. And I just happened to bump into a guy who lived right down the road from me here in Indiana, which, Indiana's not definitely not a big state, so not a lot of whole guys bouncing around here. But we met up one day and started talking, just like we never met before, obviously, but started talking just like we're old friends. And he's very successful in the private sector, runs his own business and the financial advice. And I told him about what we're doing with the next ridgeline, and he started moving his own network to make things happen. And he's already gotten us access into a couple universities, basically opening doors for other Green Berets. And obviously he's not getting paid to do this stuff. This is stuff he recognizes as extremely valuable to our community. There's, fortunately, my role in this program manager is, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's definitely made easier by the quality of guys, and I don't want to say guys, but folks that we're working with. There's a lot of high quality people, so it makes the job easier, but it's a big task.
Blake, one of our folks on Twitter here, said that he swears it seems every time he applies for a job, it seems that being a vet actually hurt rather than helps. And it's actually it's frustrating to hear things like that from veterans who are out there in the marketplace experiencing that kind of a frustration, that challenge of overcoming not only their military past but also figuring out how to make that valuable to the employer. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, it's something that I've noticed personally, and I've heard in numerous conversations, and that comes up and guys ranking all the way up to higher level officers and higher enlisted. And I think it always comes down to a situation of networking. And when I got out, I had so many guys saying, "Dude, you got to start networking. You got to start building your network." And it never really clicked until recently. And the reason that guys are running into that, and they're whether it's actual or perceived that their veteran status is causing problems for them, all those problems can be averted if they had a more intimate relationship with the person that's actually making decisions. And more often than not, that intimate relationship isn't just going to, it's just not going to happen unless you have connections to that person or to that individual that's actually making the decisions. So it's unfortunately it's not something you can do on your own, which makes it all the more challenging. And it's probably part of the problem that veterans have to begin with is it's all built into our heads. You have to be self-sufficient. You have to be the maker of your own destiny, but that makes it harder to reach out to people and say, here's what I need help with, here's what I'm wanting to do. But the moment you start doing that is the moment you start learning more about yourself and what your strengths are, but more importantly what your weaknesses are. So building that network, and specifically building it out to find people of like minds who are wanting to pursue similar passions, that's going to be the easiest way to make that transition to where you're not, oh, look, it's just a veteran coming in. That problem definitely exists, and I think it's going to come back to, like you said, translating what the military is, what veterans are capable of, and what sort of values they can bring to the table. And it goes back.
What about working with other organizations, Blake? There are many veterans organizations out there. There are a host of focus for them. There's everything from, someone that may focus on tech, someone that may focus on finance. What about partnering with other organizations?
That is I'll put it this way. That's our primary focus of the network, is to identify and vet those organizations that have already run the miles, because part of what this program is and what we all recognize is, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to cover the same grounds that someone else has already covered, because it would be duplicating efforts and burning energy and resources that aren't unlimited. So that's part of what we hope to do with every element of what we're doing is identify those programs that are already out there and already exist, and we can pair up with and work together to have mutually beneficial relationship. And if we do identify those gaps again, that hey, there's no program out there for X, Y, and Z. Well, that's when we'll start to identify specific individuals that are good at that and start to build that within our own program, so we can be a benefit to others.
Well, thanks, Blake. I mean, again, it's great that you took the initiative, and it's about leadership is about taking the initiative. You see something that can be better, and you fill and you jump in the gap. And I want to thank you and everybody at the Green Beret Foundation and Ridgeline, and just thank you for enlightening us on what you're doing, and know that we continue to be in your circle to assist any way we can at the General Leadership Foundation. So, David, back to you.
Yeah, Blake, thank you. I mean, it's great work that you're doing over there with the Next Ridgeline, and certainly for our Special Forces guys, they've really laid it on the line, and when they come home, we need to do everything we can. Blake Miles, former Special Forces Sergeant, Program Director of Next Ridgeline, which is a Green Beret Foundation program. And thanks again. Next, I am live here in New Orleans at the New Orleans Downtown Marriott at the Convention Center. General Michel and Colonel Fritz in D.C. and in New York. We're all tied in on the phone lines. Joining us next, it's a real privilege. There's just no other way to put it. Staff Sergeant Clint Romesha, Medal of Honor recipient. He went beyond the call of duty in 2009 during the Battle of Kamdesh in eastern Afghanistan. And he joins us with the good graces of the American Values Center, the Center for American Values, their website, AmericanValuesCenter.org. General Michel, Colonel Fritz, and Clint Romesha next.
This is the David Webb Show. David Webb. David Webb Show. General Leadership with General John Michel and Colonel Matthew Fritz on SiriusXM Patriot.
A lot of times people ask the question, why general leadership, when I talk to them. One of the reasons is what we do here is more than just about discussing issues of leadership. It's also about providing an example. You can go to GeneralLeadership.com. It's a public blog for all of you to join in. But when you look at the great group that have assembled to do this, and you look at the roles they have played, not only in our country, not only in military, General Roger Brady, Lieutenant General Kathleen Gainey, Colonel Ken Landreth, General Veshery, Brigadier General Alan Jamerson, and so many more. When you look at the range of skills and of leadership that we have brought to this audience, it goes beyond what we do when we have these conversations. You can go to the website, GeneralLeadership.com. You can look at the list of guests who have come on the show to lend their voices and their time. Carly Fiorina, actor Gary Sinise, my good friend, Ken Wall, Colonel Mike Kessler, the Young Marines, and so many more. It goes beyond just having a discussion on leadership, but it's also examples. And General, I think this is something that we need to stress even more often. You look at Angela Mayers, you look at Katie Hargrove, at Garth Sanchoniti. There's such a wide range of people who've worked so hard to put this out there for people to learn from. Absolutely, David, and you hit it. When you talked about what we need now is less just conversation about leadership and character, and really to share living, tangible examples of what character manifest looks like.
And we've been privileged to bring a lot of people on the show that are tremendous examples. And we have a selfless team of people who do this as volunteers, as a nonprofit, because this is one of the most important conversations we'll ever have, right? This is the future of America. This is about how do we collectively encourage one another to be leaders of character and examples worth following. And it's an absolute privilege. And David, I just want to say thank you for even making this possible. For almost, we're going on 2 years pretty quickly, and it was your vision and it was your willingness to allow us to share the airwaves with you that has now taken a conversation and magnified it across the globe. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and I'll tell you what, the Patriot audience, they're the ones who have a lot of thanks to say. I hear it all the time. There's no way that I can do this introduction to our next guest. I have to turn this one over to you, John. Clint is an amazing example of an American soldier, so take it away.
Thank you. You, ladies and gentlemen, you want to talk about truly a privilege to introduce. When we talk about the word hero, well, this is a living, breathing example. And what we've done is we've actually put the Medal of Honor citation on our website, and I encourage you to go to General Leadership to see that, because I want to maximize the time that I give Clint Romesha, who, as you heard in 2009, risked his life in order to do what needed to be done to care for others and to be just an incredible example. And Clint, it is humbling and an incredible privilege for us to be able to introduce you to the listening audience, and thank you for being with us here tonight.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on tonight. It's a privilege and an honor to get to sit here for a few minutes and talk about simple little things as leadership and integrity and patriotism and American values that really make a difference in the world.
Well, you're living that, and what I'd like in the time that we have left is, would you just share with the, I know your commitment to developing character in others, and would you share with the listening audience why you're so passionate about helping instill conversations and the importance of developing character traits in this next generation of American?
Well, the next generation's our future. It's our investment. That if we don't spend the time and sit here and invest into those youth of tomorrow, you know, we're going to be spinning our wheels. We're going to forget our history, forget where we came from. And I've seen it a lot today where you see youth that have a lot of priorities in life, and priorities are always great to have. Don't get me wrong, but it's those values, those values of honor, integrity, patriotism that are the core of everything. They're the foundation that everything else has got to be built on. And if we don't sit there and talk to the youth and show them and lead from the examples of what we've done and instill it in them at a young age, and as they continue to grow up and become adults of their own, you know, we're doing a great injustice to our nation by breaking that chain and leaving behind that history and knowledge that we could provide for them.
Clint, this is Colonel Fritz. I have to say I'm constantly inspired by the humility that's often shown by folks in your situation. Truly heroes who really endured amazing, overwhelming circumstances, and in the end, what they share with people they talk to is just, I was doing my job. There I was, and you even said it yourself as you came onto the program. Something as simple as leadership and integrity, which are not simple things by any stretch of the word, but for you, it was born into you. It was a character trait that you showed in a time when it was truly needed. I just have to ask, you know, if you have to look back at who you are now and what it took to become the person you have become over time, what are those character traits that you think truly are ones that we may learn from, if not share with our young people, so that we can inspire them to grow to greatness like you?
You know, for me, growing up, I had the advantage of coming from a really great family and stuff that instilled those values and character traits in me early. My grandfather was a World War II veteran that, you know, I just always looked up to, and he always taught me one simple thing, you know, all we have is our word in life. And if we don't honor that, then the only thing we're going to leave behind is a name. And how do you want people to speak that name or think about you when you're gone? And it just comes down to the simple facts of just doing what you're going to tell people what you're going to do and just do it. It's humbling to be able to learn that from a young age, but unfortunately, you know, like I said, I had my family there to support me the entire time growing up, and kids of this generation, though, you see that there is a disconnect with the destabilization of the family nucleus, and they need to get that from somewhere. And there's great organizations out there. Drew Dix runs a great Center for American Values there in Pueblo, Colorado, that does a lot of outreach in that. And that's just something that we can always gravitate back to, no matter where we find ourselves in life, whether it's making choices every day from school, or whether you find yourself in a faraway land in a pretty dire circumstance. You can gravitate back to those character traits of just honor, integrity, and knowing that you've got a job to do, and you're going to surround yourself with people that are going to do the exact same.
Thanks, Clint.
Colonel Fritz back there in D.C., let's get you back in on this for the last few minutes.
I'll tell you, David, we're continually overwhelmed by the amazing types of personalities we're able to bring on this show, but I have to say I'm personally extremely humbled every time somebody from the Center for American Values reaches out to us and gives us an opportunity to bring on somebody like Clint Romesha, who truly typifies exactly what we established general leadership to bring to the American people, and that is honor, integrity, and character. Truly, when we say leadership advice from America's most trusted leaders, Clint Romesha typifies a perfect example of exactly the kind of person we're talking about there. Over and over again, military leaders are highlighted as being the most trusted members in our society, above corporate leaders, and in every facet. The reason for that is because of the fine examples that are set by folks like Clint, who do it so easily, who do it so selflessly. So Clint, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on our show tonight and being a part of what general leadership is trying to bring to the American people.
Oh, I thank you very much for having me. And if I could just say one more thing before I got to go here, is all the listeners out there, all of our veterans that are listening in tonight, I can't thank you guys for your service and your sacrifice enough, and welcome home, guys.
Thank you, Clint.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Clint, thank you. And considering what I did to your name the first time around, it's Romesha. At least I got it right on the way out, thanks to John.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
All right, I'll see you out there in Colorado sometime. Clint Romesha, recipient of the Medal of Honor, above the call of duty. There's just no words that typify that more. Thank you, Clint. Well, John, another hour down.
David, I tell everybody
this is
the fastest hour of my life.
I'm blown away. Yeah, it is. I mean, Lieutenant General Johnson, Blake Miles. I mean, we've covered the services, we've covered the principles, and this is the beginning, as we talked about, of our next level for general leadership, where every month we will have a new general, a new admiral, a new flag officer, and we'll bring on those senior examples as we have always done. We just kick it up a notch along with the folks out there to typify this principle and these principles of leadership, even in the civilian world as well.
I agree. Matter of fact, you can write this one down. I look forward to the day we have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff joining us on this show, who has the great privilege of being, if you will, the most visible military leader in the world. And I'm confident that day will come. And because people are figuring out, we're about demonstrating people of character. So next month, David, as we get off now, I want to talk about, we're going to unveil on our next show the Mentors Matter program. And people are going to want to listen, because this is a nationwide initiative to take what we've been talking about and moving it into the classroom.
We move it to activation. Colonel Fritz, thank you. General John Michel. See, I have to go out officially. You're retired now, but I get to do it both ways. I'll
Amen.
Talk to you soon, my friend.
Thank you again. Have a great time down in New Orleans. I look forward to seeing you.
From the New Orleans downtown Marriott at the Convention Center, second hour, Rick Unger next.